In the beginning, we saw a man named Henry. He has returned to Hong Kong after many years of service in the US military, hoping to begin a career as a teacher. He returns to his previous school, Taki Secondary. The principal observes that he has no teaching experience, but after being presented a recommendation letter from a higher authority. Before Henry leaves, the principal reminds him that the class he is assigned to teach is infamous. Henry arrives into his first day of school to find the classroom in complete disarray. Some pupils are asleep, while others are singing. Some are playing computer games, while others are preparing ramen on a portable burner. Even after the teacher steps in, they completely ignore him and go about their business. Henry attempts to get their attention, but they pretend not to hear him. He abandons his attempt to distract their attention and walks around the classroom remarking on what they are currently doing. Students who are cooking are encouraged to consume less ramen since it contains too much sodium. Which means Henry then approaches a man named Zufa who is playing the ukulele and assists him. Similarly, he tells a gaming youngster about the radiation he may be exposed to from looking at a screen all day. He introduces himself and writes his name and phone number on the board when the pupils eventually start listening to him. His penmanship is so bad that the students laugh. Then a student approaches him and begs him to leave the class, but Henry laughs it off. The youngsters continue to ignore him and carry on with their activities before he arrives. Henry has had enough and uses a rubber band and chalk to activate the fire sprinkler in the room. The kids rapidly fan out in order to avoid getting soaked. He now has their entire attention and invites them to his class. Following class, a gang of 5 lowest-ranking pupils gathers in the sports supply room to smoke. The group's leader, Jack, has a crush on an 8th grade student from another class. The others notice him looking at her photo and mocking him. The club has a feud with the school's basketball team's affluent and pampered students. They enter the supply room and, as usual, insult Jack for his poverty. Later, the basketball team is practicing while Jack and the others watch from a distance. Jack spills a bottle on the court, causing the team to lose the lead. The group laughs, but Miss Liang, the school's English instructor, gives them detention. To escape punishment, they perform a prank on her and flee while she is cleaning her desk elsewhere. The school's principal is concerned since the education board intends to remove 20% of their annual budget. People from the board come to check how the monies are being spent at the school. Simultaneously, Henry enters the classroom, where kids have put up a bucket of water to prank him, but his reflexes are faster than the falling bucket, and he is able to avoid it. Students who had gathered to mock him are stunned as he is pushed away. When Henry asks for Jack's packet of cigarettes, Jack just delivers him the pack, knowing that he smokes. Inquiring about what he is about to undertake, Henry asks Zufa to list the 3 elements in a cigarette. When he properly answers the question, he is allowed to skip class for the day. Everyone begins banging on their desks, begging that they be allowed to skip class. When they come to a halt, he offers each of them a cigarette and instructs them to examine it. Henry understands that if he just explains the effect it has on their health, people would dismiss it. Instead, he questions them about the consequences of smoking cigarettes and, for the first time, explains how tar accumulates in their lungs. They pay attention to the teacher and are really interested in what they are studying. After the bell sounds, he begs them to return the smokes, and the kids grudgingly comply. That day in the cafeteria, the basketball team captain trips one of Jack's pals, Bruce, on his leg. This sparks an argument between the groups, which quickly escalates into a brawl. They spoil the play by throwing food and tables at each other. Later, Henry learns that 5 of his classmates have been temporarily suspended for inciting the fight. Henry discovers Jack battling his opponent in the corridor and intervenes when they are instructed to cool down. Jack accuses the school of being unjust because the affluent students are not punished on that particular day. Henry checks over the files of all 5 pupils after school. To learn more about them, the first is Zufa, the son of a Pakistani immigrant who is often discriminated against due to his color. Zufar's primary ambition in life is to become a musician, despite the fact that he is frequently accused of stealing by the cops in his area. Dinan, the second pupil, is a young lady. She had been a disappointment to her father since her birth since he had always desired a boy. Dinan has been attempting to obtain her father's approval. She even had her hair trimmed shorter. And pretended to be a guy by playing with vehicles, but her father doesn't care about her while treating her younger brother like Then there are the brothers Bruce and Chris. When they were children, their mother ran away with a guy, turning their father into an alcoholic. Growing up, the brothers had only each other to rely on. To avoid reality, Bruce grew infatuated with video games, while Chris worked hard in a grocery shop to provide for the family. Finally, Henry cannot discover any information regarding Jack's family history. In the next scene, we see Jack working in a restaurant. Jinying, the waiter and MMA champion, arrives to the restaurant with his business partners. When Jinying is not looking, Jack snatches his expensive lighter but gets apprehended. After checking Jack's ID and discovering that he is a student, Jennings' guys beat him up and offer him a job as their food delivery man. Henry goes to Zufar's house somewhere else. And when he discovers him fleeing from his father and his accomplices after stealing a ticket, he first assists him, but after learning why he is being pursued, he sides with his father. Then he and Zufa show up to chill around. Bridge performs in the streets with a band to urge Zufa to do anything he wants. Zufa joins him seconds later and sings in front of an audience for the first time. Years ago, I was tormented in school. Meanwhile, Bruce and Chris's father arrives home late as usual and requests that they get him a drink from the shop. When the brothers refuse to cooperate, he shouts at them to leave his residence. The next day, Henry talks with their father and persuades him to send his son to rehab. Meanwhile, Denny's father offers her a bag of cosmetics and tells her to act like a girl. Deanan is finally angry with him for continuously making. This is how she feels. She is insufficient. She does her younger brother's makeup and slips out of the home with the vehicle key. She is ready to drive away in her father's. But it is a car. When she is stopped by Henry at the appropriate time, he informs her that driving without a license is unlawful and provides an alternative. They then proceed to a go-kart racetrack. Henry also invites and makes her father. During the race, Grace, the father and daughter, show no compassion to each other and end up outside the track. Demand's go-kart is suddenly struck by a vehicle, but she manages to avoid it. Unaware of this, her father sobs, lamenting the death of his daughter. Deanan understands he loves her and embraces him. The next day at school, Bruce and Chris, as part of a group, are assigned to a rehabilitation clinic to conduct an interview with a recovering alcoholic. They are taken aback to learn that the person they must interview is their father. The kids inquire as to how he became a drinker. The guy responds that he loved his wife sincerely, but she abandoned him at his lowest time in life. As a result, he began to drink and forgot that he had 2 children to care for. Bruce and Chris are not revealed by the guy for his boys, yet he apologizes to them at the end, leaving the brothers crying someplace else. Jack has begun working for the M and a better Jinying. He promises Jack a large sum of money to drug and drink combatants in the upcoming game. Jack is hesitant, but he is compelled to accept the. On the day of the battle, he is a true sponsor of a boxer, but he wagers money on his defeat. Jack slips narcotics in the combatants' drinks, but is discovered doing so and is beaten up and placed inside a locker before blaming Jinying. When Henry arrives, he asks the combatants if they have seen his pupil. The guys motion for him to come home, but Jack remained inside the locker. When he realizes he is imprisoned, he yells for help. Henry confronts them and effortlessly defeats them. When the combatants step it up, things become a little heated, but Henry manages to avoid their blows. By the conclusion, he had knocked out their finest fighter, who was scheduled to compete in a few minutes. They are in the hospital in the next scene, where Henry is being treated for his injuries. Jack tries to disclose the truth about Jinying but is silenced. When Henry teaches in class, the students pay close attention and work hard to prepare for the approaching exam. Everyone is performing well on their college admission exams except Bruce, who has become hooked to pills. It turns out that, while Chris went to video games to hide his family's issue, Bruce began using drugs because he is distracted. He does poorly on the sample admission exam, and Henry pledges to help him, but Bruce becomes more sad over time. He eventually leaps from their house's balcony. He is brought to the hospital and placed in a coma. The media spins the story to blame the school and Henry for what Bruce did. The education board authorities interview Henry and decide to terminate his teaching career. Since when he packs his belongings and leaves the school, the pupils follow him, pleading for him to stay. They are grieved by his absence, but they know that their approaching exam will allow them to make him proud. They studied twice as hard after that to prove to the board that Henry is a competent instructor. On the day of the test, Jack and his classmates get a text message from Henry. When asked to assemble at the school an hour before the exam, the pupils discover that it was Jennings' plan to keep them trapped in the school so they wouldn't make it to the examination hall in time. He's doing this in order to teach Henry a lesson. After a while, Henry comes at school and learns about Jennings' scheme. In battles, he frees the students and all of Jennings' people to prevent them from injuring the youngsters. They flee and make their way to the examination room as swiftly as they can. While Henry is battling Jinying one-on-one, Jinying admits that he was the person that Henry had thrown water balloons at when he was a kid. Henry was unable to compete in a major music competition after breaking his arm. He hasn't touched a piano since the event and blames Henry for wrecking his goal. Henry attempts to talk with him, but is attacked once again. They are attempting to obtain a knife. Finally, Henry has the opportunity to murder him, but he declines. He begs pardon for what he did when he was a child. Away, the students arrived in the examination venue on time and completed the test. A few weeks later, they all passed with flying colors. Jimmying begins to play the piano again, but he has a long way to go before he is as excellent as he once was. Bruce heals fast and vows to take the admission exam the following year. The principal is delighted as well. Because the board chooses to grant them a 20% bonus fund because their kids performed very well in the admission exam, Henry returns to teaching and does the fire sprinkle trick on another group of students.